Chase Deo's life seemed ordinary until an unexpected collapse thrust him into darkness and terror. As he battled fear, a mysterious light appeared, cutting through the suffocating void. What happened next would change everything. What was this light, and what did it reveal to him? The light that saved him. This is the story of Chase Deo, a man who lived a life of routine, order, and calm. For years, his days were predictable, shaped by his time in the Air Force. He never questioned life or death, he just lived. That is, until the day everything changed. It started like any other evening. Chase was running late for work on the base. He sat down on the couch, but then something strange happened. Suddenly, he felt dizzy. His body grew weak, and before he could react, he collapsed onto the floor. His world went black. His supervisor, with a key to his dorm, came in expecting to catch him sleeping. Instead, she found him unconscious on the floor. As doctors and nurses crowded around, the world seemed to blur. Chase was no longer in his living room. He was surrounded by complete darkness, a thick, suffocating blackness that pressed in from every direction. It was as if the world had vanished. There was no light, no sound, no way to tell where he was. Panic gripped him immediately. He tried to move, but his body wouldn't respond. His breath was shallow, his heart pounding in his chest, but the darkness remained unyielding, crushing. Then came the whispers. They were low and menacing, like 1,000 voices speaking at once. Chase couldn't make out the words, but he felt their cold, dark presence. Something evil, something ancient, feeding off his fear. Every step he tried to take, every move, only made the whispers louder, closer. The darkness wasn't just a void, it was alive. The fear he felt was overwhelming, a terror so deep that it froze him in place. He could feel the darkness surrounding him, pressing on his mind, dragging him deeper into despair. He wanted to scream, but no sound escaped his lips. He was trapped, completely alone, with nothing but the relentless darkness in those whispers. And just when he thought he couldn't take it anymore, when it seemed like all hope was lost, something incredible happened. Far in the distance, barely visible, a small, faint light appeared. It flickered weakly at first, but then, like a star breaking through a stormy sky, it began to grow. Chase's heart raced. Could it be real? Was he imagining it? The light grew stronger, pushing against the darkness, cutting through it like a knife. It wasn't just a light, it was something more, something powerful. As it came closer, Chase felt warmth, a comfort he hadn't known in what felt like a lifetime. The cold, suffocating fear that had held him captive began to ease. He could breathe again. A voice to his left whispered, "Air will travel up your arm. It will hurt, but everything will be okay." When he turned to look, no one was there. At that moment, he saw the heart monitor flatline, and suddenly he felt himself rising. The experience filled him with overwhelming love and peace. The light wasn't just bright, it was dynamic. It was as though it was calling to him, telling him that there was more to life than the fear and darkness that had consumed him. It didn't speak in words, but it told him everything he needed to know, and he assumed it was Jesus talking to him. Even in the darkest places, there was hope. There was a way out. There was purpose, even when it seemed lost. As the light drew nearer, Chase felt his body fill with peace. It was like a warmth spreading from the inside out, a sense of calm he'd never felt before. The fear, the terror, the suffocating darkness. Everything was melting away, replaced by something far stronger. The light wasn't just a guide out of the dark, it was showing him the truth, a truth that went beyond anything he had ever known. And just as quickly as it appeared, the light began to fade. It wasn't gone, but it pulled away, leaving Chase with a sense of clarity he'd never had before. He wasn't alone. He wasn't lost. There was a reason for everything, and now he understood. But the light couldn't stay. It had done its part. It had given him hope, shown him a new way to see the world. Then with a sudden jolt, he woke up. His eyes shot open, his breath coming in sharp gasps. He was back in his world, in his body, in his hospital room. But it didn't feel real. The doctors were there staring at him with worried eyes. They said he had collapsed, that he was lucky to be alive. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the light, the warmth, the truth that had been shown to him in the darkest moment of his life. It wasn't just a dream. It had been real. As Chase lay in the hospital recovering from his ordeal, the truth of what had happened began to settle deep inside him. The darkness, the whispers, the terror, it was all real. But so was the light, and now he knew what he had to do. He had been given a second chance, not just at life, but at understanding. There was more to the world than what we see, and it was his job to share that truth. But when he tried to tell others what had happened, most of them didn't believe him. They thought it was just a hallucination, a side effect of the trauma. But some listened. They saw the truth in his eyes, the change in him. And through those few, Chase began to understand. The light had shown him something far bigger than himself. The darkness was still there, lurking in the shadows, but now it didn't seem so frightening. He had seen the truth, and he knew that the light was always there, even when it felt impossible to find. It was his mission now to carry that light, to help others find it when they were lost in their own darkness. The journey wasn't over. It had only just begun. Would he be able to carry the light and guide others lost in their own darkness? The answers would reveal themselves in time. A mission of light and hope. When Chase returned to his life after a brush with death, something inside him had shifted. The moment he opened his eyes and breathed in the sterile air of the hospital room, he knew his journey was far from over. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. He had been given a message, one so urgent, so powerful, that it could not be ignored. The weight of the mission pressed down on him like an invisible force. Chase had always prided himself on his strength, his ability to endure any challenge, to overcome any obstacle. But this was different. The message he carried was not his own. It was from something far greater, something beyond human understanding. As the days passed, he tried to return to his normal routine. He spoke with family and friends, shared a few vague details about his experience, and went through the motions of everyday life. But no matter how hard he tried to push the memories away, the words of Jesus echoed in his mind louder than ever. Go back and share love, laughter, and light and joy. Each time he heard those words, a wave of both fear and urgency washed over him. He was only one man. What could he possibly do to change anything? The world around him seemed indifferent, wrapped up in its own chaos. People laughed at his message, dismissing it as a byproduct of trauma, a hallucination born from his mind trying to make sense of the chaos. But deep down, Chase knew this wasn't a fleeting thought. This was something real, something that could not be ignored. Chase tried to push through the doubt, the skepticism that surrounded him. He knew the road ahead would not be easy. The world was not ready to hear what he had to say, but that didn't matter. Jesus had warned him that the world would resist, that the truth would be rejected by many. Yet he was still called to speak, to share, to spread the light. His first attempt was at a small gathering, a circle of friends and acquaintances who knew him well. His voice trembled as he shared his story. At first there was a silence, a heavy stillness in the room. Then, as he spoke of the light, the peace, the overwhelming sense of love that had surrounded him, he saw something change in their eyes. Some looked away, unwilling to hear more. Others asked questions, curious but skeptical. But there were a few, just a few, who leaned in closer, their eyes wide with wonder. One of them asked, "Do you really believe that? What did you see?" Chase nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. "I don't just believe it, I know it's real." But the deeper he got into his message, the more resistance he faced. People mocked him and dismissed him as crazy, a man simply grappling with the aftermath of trauma. The pain of rejection was sharp, but it fueled something in Chase. A fire, a purpose. He couldn't let their doubt stop him. He couldn't let the world's indifference silence the message he had been given. The more he spoke, the more the message grew within him. It was no longer just about him, it was about something bigger. He had been chosen for a reason, and that reason was clear: to spread hope, to spread love, to ignite the kind of change that the world so desperately needed. Chase's journey was not about making a grand statement or achieving fame. It was about reaching the hearts of those who were ready to listen, those who were struggling, searching for a reason to keep going in a world that seemed hopeless. And so he continued. He spoke at small gatherings, shared his story online, and reached out to people who had experienced similar things. Each time he did, a few more people began to listen. A few more hearts began to open. The fire that had been kindled within him began to spread. But it wasn't easy. There were days when he questioned everything, when doubt crept in and made him wonder if the task ahead of him was too great. The world was so broken, so divided, and he was just one man. What could he do? The answer came in small moments, in the quiet conversations after a speech, in the emails and messages that came from strangers who said his words had touched them. They were the ones who mattered. They were the ones who needed to hear the truth. And for each person who listened, for each heart that was opened, Chase found new strength. Chase's heart grew with each new connection, each person who shared their story with him. Some had struggled with addiction, others with loss, and many with a sense of hopelessness. But in every conversation, in every shared moment of vulnerability, he saw something that gave him hope. There was a spark in people, a desire to change, to make the world better. They just needed someone to show them the way. Every day he pressed forward, fueled by the belief that change was possible, even if it was small. The world may have seemed divided, uncertain, and lost, but he knew that as long as there were hearts willing to listen, there was hope. The light would not be extinguished, not as long as he was there to carry it. And so, with every step he took, Chase Deo's mission to spread love, hope, and change continued, one person at a time. He wasn't alone. Valerie Peters and David, too, experienced moments of divine connection after close brushes with death. Each was given a calling to spread the message of love and hope. Their stories intertwine with Chase's, showing that these encounters are not rare, but part of a bigger purpose. Could this mission be yours too? Life-transforming afterlife encounters. Chase wasn't alone in his experience. Around the world, others like him, people who had come close to death and returned, have shared their stories of encounters with something greater, something divine. Valerie Peters, a woman whose life seemed to be just beginning, was tragically thrown into an accident that nearly took her life. As doctors worked desperately to save her, Valerie's spirit seemed to slip away. But at that moment, just as she thought all was lost, a presence enveloped her, a figure of love and warmth. Valerie had no doubt that this presence was Jesus. And in that space, she was given a message. God's love is eternal, and it's meant to be shared with others. When she returned to her body, miraculously healed, Valerie knew she had been given a second chance, not just to live, but to spread this message of hope to a world filled with fear and doubt. Valerie's encounter wasn't unique. Across the world, countless others have shared similar experiences. One such story comes from an Israeli boy named David, who, after a devastating accident, found himself in a place that felt far beyond this world. While his body lay broken, his spirit was lifted into a place of unimaginable beauty and peace. There, he claimed to meet God, who spoke to him, telling him that his time on earth wasn't yet finished and that he had a purpose yet to fulfill. When David returned to his body, his recovery was nothing short of miraculous. He felt stronger, more at peace, and deeply connected to a divine mission. These stories of divine encounters all echoed the same truth that Chase had learned in his own near-death experience. There is a deeper purpose to life, one that stretches far beyond the daily struggles and the pain we face. Like Valerie and David, Chase had been chosen to carry a message of light and love in a world that so often seems filled with darkness. Their experiences weren't just fleeting visions, they were divine encounters that changed them forever. Just like Chase, they had been shown something so beautiful, so full of love that they couldn't help but return with a mission to change the world. And that is exactly what they did. While science explains vivid experiences as brain reactions to trauma, the consistency of these encounters across cultures raises the question, are they just physiological, or is there something more profound at play? The science of near-death experiences. Near-death experiences have fascinated scientists, doctors, and spiritual seekers for decades. These profound, sometimes life-changing encounters, reported by individuals who have come close to death, often involve vivid sensations, powerful emotions, and encounters with what some describe as an afterlife. But how can science explain these extraordinary experiences? One leading scientific explanation centers on the brain's response to extreme stress and oxygen deprivation. When a person is critically injured or near death, the brain undergoes intense physiological changes. One such change is a lack of oxygen, which can lead to hallucinations. Studies have shown that a lack of oxygen in the brain can cause visual and auditory disturbances, such as bright lights, tunnels, and sounds commonly reported during near-death experiences. The sense of floating or leaving the body could be attributed to disruptions in brain function, particularly in the temporoparietal junction, a part of the brain involved in self-perception. Another theory, known as hyperconsciousness, suggests that during moments of near-death, the brain becomes unusually active. Recent research on animals, including rats, has found that when the heart stops, electrical activity in the brain spikes, particularly in areas responsible for perception and consciousness. This sudden surge of activity may contribute to the vivid, often dreamlike visions associated with near-death experiences. For example, many people who experience near-death describe encountering a bright light, feeling an overwhelming sense of peace, or even meeting deceased loved ones. The intense activity in the brain, although temporary, might create these experiences, which feel as real, if not more real, than everyday life. Another explanation revolves around the psychological response to extreme trauma. When faced with life-threatening situations, the brain may trigger the release of endorphins, natural chemicals that help the body cope with stress and pain. These chemicals could create a sense of calm and euphoria, which many people report during their near-death experiences. These feelings might explain the peaceful and comforting aspects of many near-death experiences. Additionally, there's the phenomenon of distorted time. Many near-death experiencers claim that what felt like hours or even an eternity in the afterlife lasted only minutes in real time. This can be explained scientifically by the way the brain processes time under extreme stress. When a person's brain is under duress, time perception can become warped. Our brains tend to speed up or slow down the perception of time depending on how much attention we are paying to details, which can make a few minutes feel much longer. Despite these scientific theories, no one can definitively explain the full scope of near-death experiences. Some researchers propose that the vivid, transcendent nature of these experiences is the result of a deeper spiritual phenomenon. While science can explain the physical and psychological mechanisms that may produce these visions, it cannot yet explain why many people report similar, consistent experiences, such as traveling through a tunnel or meeting a being of light. Some, including researchers like Dr. Jeffrey Long, suggest that this consistency across cultures and individual experiences points to something beyond mere brain chemistry. In the end, the debate continues. While science offers valuable insights into how the brain reacts under stress and why certain sensations might emerge during near-death experiences, it cannot yet provide a definitive answer to whether these experiences are merely physiological reactions or something more. For those who have experienced near-death, the line between scientific explanation and spiritual significance often blurs, whether one sees them as hallucinations or profound encounters with the afterlife. These experiences leave a lasting impression that transcends simple explanations. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you next time.